Hey, so this is week number 3. Week number 1, we talked about the fact that we lived in the middle of this evil, ugly world and that there was sin all over the place. We also learned about the fact that we each have a disease that is incurable and it is terminal. And I've heard from a number of you that were very unhappy to hear that. But then you realize that it's true. And when you understand that we have a disease that's terminal and incurable, the only way you live with that disease is by taking the medicine. And that medicine is named Jesus. That medicine is contained in His Word. That medicine is contained in the fellowship of the saints. And so taking the medicine is how we survive and how we thrive in this life, even though we have this disease. And then last week, we talked about this concept of livestock guardian dogs. And that we want to be the kind of dogs that protect the flock. We want to be, and we talked about 3 different kinds of dogs and just how that was. But the biggest comment I got about last week was a comment I made about anger. And I just found that really interesting that anger is one of those things that men have to deal with. And I shared just shortly how nobody can make you angry. You make yourself angry. And most of the time you make yourself angry because somebody else hasn't met your expectations. Or they just know what buttons to push. I had a great time here a while ago. I used to do premarital counseling. My wife and I wanted to do one ministry together. And so we would meet with couples that are getting ready to get married. And my first pitch to the guy was, and I say it in front of the girl because she wouldn't believe it either, but pitch was I want you to look at that beautiful woman that's sitting on the couch right there next to you. I know you think she's perfect, but she will tick you off more than anybody else in the world. Oh no, that would never happen. It's like, oh yeah, you just remember what Papa Sass said, because that's coming and it's going to hit you like a stinking train, right? And so anyway, that was what we talked about last week. This week though, I want to talk about good dogs and bad dogs. And before we even talk about that, I want you to take your papers and turn them over, get your ink pens out. If you don't have an ink pen, there should be one in the chair behind you. And I want you just put a line right down the middle of the paper. And on the left side, I want you to write some attributes of a good dog. And on the right side, I want you to write the attributes of a bad dog. Is there anybody in here that has never had a dog? I got 2 guys that have never had a dog. We'll pray for them. 3. We're going to pray for them. Because I tell you what, I learned more about life from a dog than most of anybody else in my life. So I'm going to shut up, though, for a minute while you guys are writing. Sorry. You don't get carried away, So attributes of a good dog and attributes of a bad dog. All right, that's good enough. So here's what I want you to do. I just want you just yell one of them out at a time. Attributes of a good dog. Somebody yells one, don't repeat it, okay? Loyal, obedient, loving. Happy to see you. Unconditional love. Good guard dog. Protects his family. Soft mouth. There's what I'm talking about. That's a hunter right there. That's right. Who will drop the bird when you say drop. Anyway, go on. What else? Good dogs are. They're what? Gentle. They're obedient. We already got one. That's good. What else? What else is a good dog? Potty trained. You don't want a dog that'll go in the house. Sleeps all night except for when there's a bad guy. What else? Faithful. Comes when called. Oh, baby. When to bark and not bark. What was that one over there? He's a protector. Okay, so an alarm clock. Yeah, hopefully not the one that crawls up in bed and starts licking your face when you get to sleep in. Anyway, all right, so that's a pretty good description of a good dog, wouldn't you say? There's probably some other stuff that you guys wrote down, but that's a reason to own a dog right there. Now, what's the bad dog look like? Doesn't listen. Well, one at a time, guys. Vicious. Barks all the time. Bites. Destructive. Digs. What? Somebody over here. Hard mouth. Yeah, knucklehead. I got that. What? Chews everything up. The dog that bites the hand that feeds them. Yeah, not a good dog that'll bite the hand. Go ahead, Aiden. What do you got? He poops in the house. Always a bad sign when a dog does that, isn't it? Yeah. Shakes his head when you miss a shot. You know, that's really funny. Because my first Labrador that I ever hunted with, he did that to me, embarrassed me. What was something over here? Runs away. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can tell a bad dog when he gets in heat or a girl gets in heat and he doesn't listen to anybody, right? It's like, come here. What? What'd she say? So anyway, when I use those analogies, there's not a lot of argument about what a good dog is and a bad dog is, right? And so I was thinking about these guardian dogs. And one of the things I did as I was doing some research is I wanted to know, I mean, if I was a rancher and I was going to pay really, really big bucks for one of these guardian dogs, you know, I'd want to know the thing wasn't going to eat my chickens, right? I'd want to know it wasn't going to have a sheep now and then just for the fun of it. And so I started checking about, you know, bad guardian dogs and what you get. And you know what? There are some out there. There are some breeds that were bred to be good guardian dogs that just for some reason, I don't know if it was too much inbreeding or what, became worthless. And they wouldn't do the job that they were laid out for or designed for. And so as I'm talking, I want to talk about the good dogs and what kind of analogy that is for our life and the bad dogs. And to do that, though, I have to share with you about one of my favorite dogs I've ever had. I had a big black Labrador named Thunder, which is a good name for a big black Labrador, right? And for those of you who don't know Labradors, they're pretty gentle, they're pretty amazing dogs. But Thunder was an alpha male. And I don't know if you know, I mean, I really enjoyed training dogs for hunting. And Thunder was exceptionally smart. There was no doubt about it. But I started training him and realized how smart he was. And so I actually started training him for urban search and rescue. I did that because I had this, I just knew there was something different about him. When we went down to New Mexico to do some work on my mother and father-in-law's house, and I'm on the roof, flat roof, you know, Spanish construction, flat roof, had a water cooler up there, and I'm up servicing the water cooler. And all of a sudden, my 9-month-old Labrador is up there wagging his tail. It's like, how in the heck did you get up there? He crawled up the extension ladder. And I'm impressed, and then I'm thinking, you know, at that point he's 85 pounds. I'm thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get you off this roof. That solved itself too. Just about 10 seconds after that thought was in my mind and I was pondering it, a jackrabbit takes off across the yard. Off the roof. Never missed a beat, never bruised his chin, and caught the rabbit and ate it. I'm going, that's my dog, you know. It's like, and so I started training him for urban search and rescue because you got to go up and down ladders and search piles of rubble. But I got to tell you what, the first 2 years of his life was an absolute battle to whether I was going to keep him or kill him. He was a type A, he was an alpha male, and he wanted to be the boss of everything, and he didn't want to accept the fact that I was the boss. And so we had some struggles. You talk about chewing on stuff. Every hose we had at the house, you couldn't turn it on because it looked like a sprinkler from one end to the other. Chewed every hose. I got so mad at him once because he was digging holes that I took the hose that he chewed, I filled the hole up with water through the leaky hose, and then I took the hose and tied a knot around his neck and held his head underwater until the bubbles quit coming up. I was a little unhappy. I didn't say that was the right thing to do. But I mean, because here's the deal. I just told you guys that a wife can tick you off more than anybody else in the world. Second only to a dog that won't obey, you know. I'm telling you, it was touch and go. But at the moment he accepted the fact that I was the alpha male and not him, he became an amazing dog. That dog, if I could figure out how to communicate it to him, he would do it. I used to take my kids and go take them down to the Tuolumne River Park and hide them at one end of the park and drive to the other end of the park and turn the dog loose, and he'd air scent all the way down to the end of the park and find them. I did get told that may have been not a good idea. But the dog worked really well on that deal, you know. Listen, I didn't say I did everything smart, okay? And so I share that story with you because there's a real experience, a lesson to be learned there. And so I want to take a look, though, at the good dog for a second and how that relates to us as men, as guardians of the flock that God entrusted to us, which we talked about last week as well. And there's 3 verses, and the first verse is about loyalty. It says in Psalms 31:23, "Love the Lord, all you godly ones, for the Lord protects those who are loyal to him." Did you catch that? For the Lord protects those who are loyal to him, but he harshly punishes the arrogant. So all of a sudden you start to get a feeling that there's a difference between loyalty, and it's interesting that he compares not loyalty to disloyalty, but he compares loyalty to arrogance or pride. And so loyalty has got this deep feeling of not only do I trust you, but even when I don't know that I trust you, I'm with you. It's that concept of I have your back all the time. For those of you guys who have played on athletic teams that were really good teams, when you knew that the guy next to you always had your back, that's a pretty good feeling, isn't it? Matter of fact, guys, that's really one of the feelings I hope we develop in this group of men, that we get a spirit of loyalty to one another, that we get each other's backs, that we watch each other's backs. But it's interesting that God talks about he protects those who are loyal, but he harshly punishes those who are arrogant. So apparently arrogance, pride, is an enemy to being loyal. Interesting concept. I don't know that I ever thought about it before. The second thing is obedience. God expects us to be loyal, but he also expects us to be obedient. And he says this in Psalms 32:11. It says, "So rejoice in the Lord and be glad, all you who obey him. Shout for joy, all those whose hearts are pure." And so he's saying, listen, if you obey me, you're going to be glad. You're going to be glad, and you're going to have a heart full of joy if you just do what I ask you to do. Now, ain't that really interesting that generally when we think of the term obey, we think of that in some pretty negative thoughts? Like, you ain't going to tell me what to do. You can't make me obey. It's like, oh yeah? It's like me and thunder in the pot of water, you know? It's like, I don't think I'd want God tying that hose around my neck and holding my head underwater, because you know what? He can do that. But what's really amazing is he chooses not to a lot of the time because he loves you so much. And he knows the best way to help train you up. But so there's this concept of loyalty and there's this concept of obedience. By the way, being obedient to a just and holy and righteous God is really actually a pretty cool thing. Because you never get asked to do the wrong thing. You never get asked to do a bad thing. That God just says, listen, I got these ways I want you to live for your benefit. And so the whole concept of being loyal and obedient is a joy. It's a positive thing if we embrace it. And then the third thing is he wants us to be engaged. And when you think about this concept of being engaged, Ephesians 6:18, it says, pray in the Spirit at all times and on every occasion. Stay alert and be persistent in your prayers for all believers everywhere. So this concept of Well, we talked about it in church the last few weeks, being watchful, staying alert, paying attention, being on duty is the concept that he's looking for. And so I want to give you this picture. So if we're really looking at this analogy of being guardian dogs, what would that look like in our families? What would that look like with our wife? What would that look like with a group of your friends? What would that look like if you were absolutely loyal to them above all else? Or if you were obedient to God and always did the right thing on their behalf? And that you were always paying attention. Guys, I can't tell you the number of times I came home from work and was tired and beat up and just didn't want to have anything to do with my family. And so I checked out. I was off duty. And guess what? When I was off duty, either my wife picked up the slack or my kids didn't have any discipline in their lives and they ran amok. And it was just like, well, I'm just too tired. Yeah, really? I'm just too lazy is what I was. And so I share that because I now want to talk about the bad dog. And the bad dog, in some of the videos I found, I was going to show you a video that, I'm going to show you a video. It's like 2 minutes long. That's not the video. That's a good dog right there, by the way.
Since the 1960s, Myron Henneman has raised and cared for thousands of animals at Heartland Farms. But lately, only one word describes how things have been for the farmer.
Tough. Real tough.
That's because just last week, he was looking after 110 goats and sheep. But now, he no longer has that many.
6:30, I was heading down west, and my partner came on the farm and told me there's 6 dogs in the pen, killing the sheep them.
Henneman says a pack of stray dogs broke into the pen by digging a hole and hopping over his 6-foot barbed wire fence. He rushed back to Heartland Farms to rescue his animals, but the killing hadn't stopped.
Lost about 15 baby lambs. Dogs just break the back and kill them. Then the dogs looked to attack me, and I ended up shooting 4 out of the 6.
The Humane Society said it came out to the farm as soon as it got the call from the Department of Agriculture, but it had to euthanize 12 animals who were suffering.
You can still smell the blood here at Heartland Farms from the 36 dead animals who were slaughtered by a pack of dogs. That includes these 2 last remaining animals, a mama sheep and her baby.
It's rough. It's like you raise your animal and you see it looking so good. And then one day, it's hurtful, but you have to continue. And I will continue.
Henneman says he lost $12,000 worth of livestock, but his biggest concern is the possibility that these stray dogs can kill human life, as his farm is close to the main road and nearby a public school.
We have to be careful, because today is sheep and goat, tomorrow will be one of our kids or grandkids. And we have to really look at it seriously.
So killings like this stop completely. Allison Bornvanek, News 2.
And so here's the thing, guys. When good dogs go bad, they do damage. And there are times when if the guardian dog isn't doing what he's supposed to do, then the sheep are going to suffer. And when you really think about that, if you really think about a man's life, when a man gets carried away in sin or turns into a bad dog, if you will, there's going to be damage. There's going to be damage in the family. There's going to be damage in the neighborhood. There's going to be damage all around. And so really, I think the message that God was talking to me about is, listen, Rich, it's important that you're a good dog, because if you're a bad dog, it's not just you. It's not just you that's going to be hurt. And so these attributes of a bad dog, the first one I got is out of James. It's James 3:15 and 16. It says, "For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind." And so I use the word self-indulgent for this kind of thing that a dog does when a dog is so concerned about itself that all it does is want to feed its own desires. And I got to tell you guys, we live in a culture that always asks you the question, or gives you the statement, you deserve to be happy. Make yourself happy. Do what feels good. And I'm telling you right now, that is a signal from the enemy that they're trying to give you permission to be selfish and self-indulgent. And boy, I got to tell you, I haven't heard this kind of strong wording in many passages, but listen to this. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. So here's what I want to tell you guys. When we allow selfishness to take over in our life, when everything's about us, this is the result. The result is everything and everybody around us is going to pay the price for our selfishness. And that's not a good and easy thing to hear, but boy, I'll tell you what, it's prevalent. It's happening. You can't imagine how many guys, when I sit down and they want to tell me their story about how their life's all messed up, you know, it's one of the 2 or 3 major root causes that I can identify within the first 2 or 3 minutes of a conversation. Well, yeah, that's all you cared about was yourself. And the reason you're here is because you're ticked off that you're not getting your way. It's just like, you're not here because you're worried about your family. You're here because you're not getting what you want. And so selfishness, self-indulgence is just a huge issue. The second thing, flesh indulgence. I made up that term. Okay, I didn't make it up. I prayed about it and I heard it when God was talking to me. 1 Peter 2:11, it says, Beloved, I urge you as aliens and strangers to abstain from fleshly lust which war against the soul. And so it just goes kind of right along with self-indulgence, doesn't it? It's like the whole concept of porn is the perfect tool that the enemy uses to get us focused on just ourselves and our flesh. Because what's the world say? Oh, don't worry about it. It's a secret. Nobody will ever know. It's just a private thing. And who does it hurt if you just indulge your own self? Because you deserve to be happy. You deserve to get what you want. By the way, I will tell you that's an absolute lie from the devil. Earthly, spiritual, demonic, just like it talked about in the verse before. But here's the thing, guys, and you need to know this if you've never heard it before. Pornography is not a victimless crime. Pornography is a form of slavery that you invite into your life. Because here's the thing about it. The picture that you see today that excites you ain't enough tomorrow. And you need to go further and further down that road to get excited to fulfill your own fleshly desires. And guess what? There's no way you can do that without it bleeding out of your life into other places. I could tell you horror story after horror story. I'll tell you one about a guy I worked with a number of years ago. So he liked drinking, he liked partying with a lot of the other fire guys. And when he was drinking, he was doing stupid stuff. And so his wife said, man, I just had enough of this, and she left him. Not long after that, he's into pornography because he's lonely and he wants to satisfy himself. And he gets so far down into this that now he's starting to look at child pornography. And you know, when you're in that kind of web world, it's not a big step to take another step to, well, I'm going to share that with some guys I know online that would like this stuff. And all of a sudden, he's now distributing child porn, finds himself on his way to prison, lost his fire department job, lost his family, and you know what? It just pretty much destroyed his whole life. Oh, that can't happen. It's just looking at pictures. I'm telling you right here, guys, the thing about sin is, man, it's just never enough. And the more that you want it, the more it owns you, the more it traps you. And so, self-indulgent, flesh-indulgent. The third thing here is distraction. It's really interesting how the enemy is great at distracting us. And guess what? This one's a lot more subtle. You can be distracted with all kinds of stuff. 1 Corinthians 7:35. By the way, I had to use the New King James Version here. I almost never use it, but I just love the way the term was because it talked about dogs a little bit. It says, "In this I say for your own profit, not that I may put a leash on you." Get that leash, dog? Get that? Come on, guys, be with me. "But for what is proper, that you may serve the Lord without distraction." Guys, we get distracted by so many things. We get distracted by debt. We get distracted by projects. We get distracted by hobbies. We get distracted by literally hundreds of thousands of things. God's saying, listen, some of those aren't even bad things. But they're bad things when you put them in front of me. They're bad things when you put them in front of your family. They're bad things when they become the idol of your self-indulgence. So anyway, I want to share that with you, but I need to end this with this story that I heard in Africa. And it's really interesting. So I'm over in South Africa. I'm with a group of guys that are training some local pastors. Now these local pastors, half of them had to walk 30 to 40 miles just to get to where we were having this meeting. They live in grass huts and mud floors. They have a church that's a grass hut and mud floors. They may have 10 or 15 people that they're shepherding. And I was trying to share a message with this one pastor, and it was a message about the battle that goes on inside of us. And he says, he says, I know, I got a good story. He says, let me explain it to you. And I'm going, okay, explain what I'm teaching you. Well, he did. He says, the heart has two dogs in it. It's got a white dog and a black dog. The white dog is the good and the black dog is the bad, and they're always fighting with each other. And he says, you know what dog wins? The dog I feed the most. I'm going, yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. Yeah. So every one of us has the opportunity or the potential to be a good dog or a bad dog, guys. We have that sin nature inside of us. But like I talked about in the first week, if we take the medicine, we're feeding the good dog, right? And the more you feed the good dog, the more he keeps the bad dog under control. And guess what? When we're the good dog, we're tending to the sheep that are entrusted to us. We're watching over them. We're taking care of our families. And guess what? We're able to set aside things like our self-indulgence, like our flesh indulgence, like being distracted because we're focused on what God has for us. So a couple of questions there, but here's the challenge for this week. The challenge for this week is, guys, is that every morning while you're spending a little time on your march, spending time with God, have a conversation, a real, honest conversation with God saying, man, is there any junk in my life that I need to get rid of? And if there's some junk in my life, Lord, take it out of me. Forgive me, confess, repent, all this stuff that we've talked about the last couple of weeks. Anyway, guys, be the good dog, will you? Father God, bless my brothers this week. Watch over them, protect them. And God, as they go through their week, I just pray that you would bring this to their mind, to their memory, that we could be the kind of men that you want us to be. Loyal, obedient, engaged. And because of that, Lord, protected, full of joy, and having an impact on believers everywhere. Brothers, just be with my brothers now in Jesus' name.